Hey everyone, I'm Jay Smith, and alongside my co-host Bradley Kendall, tonight we're joined by two special guests. We have David and Player here this evening, and tonight we're going to be talking about the 5 greatest Clemson football players in history. So guys, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Bradley, after further review?
Clemson's had a lot of great players, but who are the top 5 players of all time?
Yeah, and that's what we're going to delve into tonight. Again, we're going to go through chronologically, start at number 5, work our way up the list, offer our opinions and our analysis on why we picked the players that we did. Starting at number 5 for me, I had Dwayne Allen, who was a tight end for Clemson between 2008 2011. He won the John Mackey Award for the most outstanding tight end in 2011. He called 93 passes for 1,079 yards and 12 TDs. And, in my opinion, I think he really redefined what it meant to be a Clemson tight end. I mean, he obviously has gone on to have a lot of success in the NFL. And, the legacy that he left on Clemson football, I don't think can really be overstated.
Yeah, I mean, the impact he had on Leggett, after he came on a couple years, he was part of a great offense, that can't go unseen. He had a lot of great wide receivers around him.
Yeah.
And, he's just a cornerstone of the team that had a lot of potential that year.
For sure. David, who'd you have at number 5?
I think I had no particular order. I just kind of wrote all these guys down. But Terry Kennard, my dad kind of grew up going to Clemson. He went to Clemson and he went to the national championship game, so I've heard plenty of stories. But Terry Kennard's one player that stuck out to me. He was a safety, 79-82, and had a rough start his freshman year. Got hurt, I think, in the first game of the season. Mm-hmm. And then, decided to come back and play and ended up being a 2-time All-American. So I guess it worked out for him.
Yeah.
Good thing he came back. Took us to the national championship, first one.
Yeah, an 81 player.
Yeah. Well, my number 5 kind of made it by default. A lot of people probably wouldn't have him in his list, but by far my favorite player growing up, Justin Miller. He was a corner from 02 to 04. He only ended up being 6th in all-time picks in Clemson history with 13, but it's really rare to have a player on that side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, that just anywhere around a pass attempt, you think if he gets his hands on it, he can take it back for 6. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it was. Like, you had an 04 against Florida State. He had the 2 kick returns in the same game. At the time, set a record, but that game was completely out of reach, but no one turned the channel because you knew Justin Miller could do anything with the ball in his hands.
And having the ability to read the opposing QB, just that innate football sense that a lot of people talk about, but not a lot of people have. It's always impressive to watch.
He's a complete ball hawk, man.
Yeah.
He's so fun to watch.
For sure. Bradley, what you have 5?
I had Spiller, C.J. Spiller, back in 08. He was 3rd all-time in all-purpose yards, which I think Christian McCaffrey has now bumped him down to 4th. But 51 total touchdowns, 8 return touchdowns. One of the more explosive players you've ever seen in Clemson. You knew he was, every time he got the ball, he was going to have a chance to take it down the field. Hasn't really panned out what we like to see in the NFL, but just one of the more, the guy that just pops out at me as one of the greatest Clemson players, especially in the running back position.
For sure, yeah. Number 4, I had wide receiver Perry Tuttle, who was he played here from 1978 to 1981. And he caught a touchdown pass in the 3rd quarter of the national championship game, or the Orange Bowl against Nebraska in 81. And he was actually featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated making that catch in the championship game. He's received a lot of awards from Clemson over the years. He was named to the Clemson Centennial Team in 96. He was named to the Clemson Hall of Fame in 1991. He's ranked 2nd all-time in touchdown receptions with 17 and receiving yards with 2,534. He's 4th all-time in receptions with 150, and he's 9th all-time with yards per completion. He averages 16.8 yards per completion, which is just insane. That, for me, honestly, I'm not sure how that's 9th on the list. I guess some of these guys only caught 4 or 5 balls. But Perry Tuttle, an icon if you're a Clemson fan. Everybody knows
very well known.
That Sports Illustrated cover of him making that catch against Nebraska.
It's like Renfro almost now.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison.
In the same boat, yep.
I'm not sure of Perry Tuttle's background. Like if he was a walk-on, I don't know what he came in. If he was a star in high school or what. But just a great success story for the university for sure.
For sure,
definitely.
Yeah, number 4, and again, no particular order. Probably my all-time favorite Clemson player, just growing up, was my hero, Woody Dantzler.
Yep.
Number 1, and first quarterback to throw for 2,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in a season. And of course, Deshaun followed that up last year. So just incredible player to watch. If he touches the ball, you know something's great is going to happen. So crazy good athlete. You know, he was almost like a running back who could throw the ball. I kind of liken him to Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one of my all-time favorites, Woody Dantzler.
You'll definitely see him on my list in a little while for sure. But my number 4 was Daquan Bowers. Not necessarily from a full career stat standpoint, because you're not going to find him super near the top in like sacks. Let's see if I have it in front of me. Yeah, he's actually not even in the top 10 in sacks. But the season he had in 2010 with 15.5 sacks, like that's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like just that season alone, you could put him up there with some of these guys, at least as an honorable mention. But just the impact he had. I don't know if you guys remember when he was coming in as a freshman, like unanimously, ESPN, all the services had him rated as like the #1 impact freshman for prediction that year. Like it definitely came to fruition later in his career. I wish he would have stayed that senior year. We'd have been a lot better that following year. But yeah, but he was so fun to watch, man. That's my number 4.
Had a lot of hype. He lived up to it.
Oh yeah, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Let's see, number 4 on my list, Michael Dean Perry. Obviously, people know his brother, the Fridge Perry. I was tempted to go with him, but looking at these stats for Michael Dean, he set some ACC records back when he played for career tackles, for loss, and for sacks. He led the defense in the 1987 season to a 10-2 season and an ACC championship. Let's see, a season in which he finished with 10 sacks and 24 tackles for loss, which is just incredible. And also kind of to go off of that, not only what he did in college, but also he was one of the more successful pro players that Clemson's had. Made 6 Pro Bowls, a 9-year NFL career, so he's had an entire career of just straight success. So he's number 4 on my list.
I like it.
Moving on, to number 3 for me, I had C.J. Spiller, who was it that touched on him a minute ago?
That was
Who
me.
had him?
Yeah.
Yeah, running back for Clemson, honestly, between 2006 2009. And what I found really fascinating and really equally impressive is his freshman year, he rushed for 938 yards despite being second string behind James Davis. And he actually had his number retired in Clemson in 2010, the year after he graduated. He finished with 3,547 yards on 591 attempts for 32 TDs, and he averaged almost 6 yards a carry. So just, in my opinion, one of the most explosive players in Clemson history. I mean, I guess you could compare it to somebody like Sammy Watkins. I think personally that DeAndre Hopkins had better hands, but I think the explosive nature of Sammy Watkins, you just knew that if he was on the field, he was a threat.
Right.
And that's what I would equate C.J. Spiller to. I mean, he was just a constant, lingering presence in the back of defensive coordinators' minds. So that's why I have him in my top 3.
Yeah. I got Brian Dawkins, number 3, Weapon X. This guy was just a madman on the field, and that's something that Clemson was missing those early 2000 years were just some bad guys on defense. And, we kind of saw that come back with Mackenzie Alexander and Jaron Kearse. There was just an attitude about the Clemson defense that I hadn't seen in years.
Yep.
And under the reigns of Tommy Bowden, they were just kind of soft. So Dawkins just kind of brought this element of play that was just ferocious and tenacious, and he was just going after it every play. So that's why I got him at number 3.
That old interview of when people asked him why did you want to come to Clemson? He said, because I want to hurt people.
Yeah.
And that kind of, you see that now with Ben Boulware going
yeah.
absolutely animalistic and body slamming people on the field during games. Because like you mentioned, back in the 80s when Clemson was a powerhouse, they were a physical football team. I mean, you had guys running around like the Fridge and, and they were just pound it. And like you mentioned, they got a little soft under Bowden. But players like Dawkins were able to kind of rejuvenate that.
I think it was Steele too, Kevin Steele. He just wasn't intense, and then you bring Brent Venables in, and he's the complete definition of intense.
For sure.
Fans
Yeah, that's a good point.
everywhere.
That's probably an underrated player that a lot of people wouldn't think of, but I think had a big impact in changing the culture.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, Brian Dawkins just missed my list. So I definitely fully agree with you. Number 3 for me, Woody Dantzler. He touched on it a minute ago.
Just a great player.
Obviously, the first player to be in the 2000-1000 club. One of my favorite quotes of all time, I think it was from, if I'm not mistaken, a Wofford coach back in 2001. It was the week prior to us playing Wofford, and he said, or somebody had asked him, what's your game plan for Woody Dantzler? He said, give me 13 players and a crystal ball. That's the only way, that's the only way I know how to defend him. And that is amazing. That makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up to this day, man. Just to be able to watch him run around. He's the first player I ever fell in love with. Actually, I met him back when I was in high school. He came and spoke at some FCA event, and I got the chance to pull him off to the side and talk to him. I said, man, it's going to be kind of weird, but I got to tell you, I cried after your last game 3 hours back to my hometown from Death Valley. My parents were very concerned about me, but they just didn't understand, like that. He meant the world to me, man, but that's made my way, made my
He was a
list.
special player.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. I had Jeff Davis, the judge, at number 3 on my list. Played on the national championship team, was defensive leader that year, won ACC Most Valuable Player. Impressive stat, 30 out of his 40 career games reached double-digit tackles, which is just, he was consistent, you could say that.
Yeah.
First team All-American, just basically did it all, and was the judge for a reason. He just led by example and, took that defense on his back. So
For sure.
That's why he makes number 3 on my list.
Yeah, a lot of the the players in Clemson lore, especially some of the most special ones are defensive players, especially from back in the 80s. I know we kind of touched on that a minute ago with the physicality of them back in the day. But again, I think you're starting to see more of that recently, which could be an indicator of the success that we've had recently with championship runs.
Championships, right?
Yeah, the old mantra rings true, because you look at the success we had in the 80s and the success we're having now, there's a lot of similarities, at least on the defensive side of the ball, in terms of the mentality.
You look at national championship teams, you look at Alabama, and every year they're just known for their defense. And their offense, they're good, but they do enough.
Right.
But their defense is what matters. And like you said, finally it's starting to return to this. I get more excited when the defense comes on the field than I do when Deshaun Watson stands on the field. Like that's saying something.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, again, obviously Brent Venables has made a name for himself as a defensive coordinator, and we've talked before about, well, are there schools looking at him, and how much is it going to take for Clemson to keep him here? Because, I mean, he's one of the highest paid coordinators in the country. I think he's making over $1 million. And I know Chad Morris was making good money when he left to go to SMU, and it obviously hasn't panned out like Morris would have liked it. But, I honestly think that besides Dabo, the most important coaching position at the school is defensive coordinator.
No doubt.
Because I've always considered Dabo more of a motivator rather than a coach.
Definitely.
I mean, Dabo is a great coach, but I think his specialty is motivating his guys, preparing them for the game, preparing them to go in with the right mentality, and having a good fundamentals coach like Brent Venables.
Yeah.
That's icing on the cake.
Dabo wouldn't be Dabo without Venables.
Exactly.
I totally
they
agree.
feed off each
It's
other.
like Batman and Robin. You need
Exactly.
right next to him.
Can't have one without the other.
Exactly. Yep.
My number 2 may be a little controversial, but I had Deshaun Watson at 2. Obviously, he's the quarterback for Clemson the last few years, 14 to 16. He won the national championship this past year. What was interesting is he wore, because in high school he wore the number 4 jersey, which was actually retired when he came here. Steve Fuller wore that back in the 70s, I think. And the number was retired, but Fuller granted him permission to wear it when he played. And, we could go on and on about all the accolades on and off the field that he has. I mean, I think he finished 33-3 as a starter. And that one of those losses was to Pitt, so I guess you could count that.
Georgia Tech got hurt.
2-time Heisman Trophy finalist, first Heisman finalist in Clemson history.
Should have won one.
Perhaps should have won. I mean, you could make that argument. We go on all night about Deshaun Watson and all he's done for the school. But I think that just in terms of impact that he's had, there's no question he's one of the top all time.
For sure. My number 2 was Spiller. Dabo's first big recruit was CJ, and he just kind of, you can see, when you look back, you can see that was the building block. CJ was the building block, and a lot of those guys, those players were given thanks to after the national championship game. But Spiller, to me, is one of those building blocks. Obviously, an incredible player. Sophomore year, was slow. Junior year and senior year were great years for him, and obviously was the highest Heisman finalist until Deshaun came for the past 2 years. But CJ was just a special player, electric. And I know me and Player talked about this earlier. The Georgia Tech game in 2006, homecoming, was one of the most electric games I've ever been to. And CJ put on a show. He didn't disappoint. And he juked those 2 guys out on the sideline and ran for a touchdown. So he was just fun to watch, and a great foundation, and one of the reasons why Clemson is where we are today. So
I think that was the game that had the noise level like whatever they broke the record for.
Yeah,
So it wasn't just the noise on the
nuts.
field.
The first one
Yeah.
that
It
broke
was
it.
the all purple unis, and I think Georgia Tech had Calvin Johnson, right?
Calvin Johnson, Reggie Ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were good. They were really good.
Yeah. But my number 2 is also C.J. Spiller. Like you said, you can look back on it now. He was the one that paved the way for all these guys to be here now. We literally wouldn't be where we were today without him.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. But like you said, that night against Georgia Tech, man,
It was special.
putting Kenny Scott and K. Michael Hall both on their backs. That was the greatest I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
But actually, it took CJ a little longer that year to progress. You know, coming into that
Yeah.
year, you had these 2 dynamic freshmen, Jacoby Ford, CJ Spiller. Jacoby Ford, first time he touched the ball as a punt return, he took it to the house. You know, and people were waiting. This 5-star CJ Spiller, when's it going to happen? And I think it was against Boston College that year. Like, he was already a step and a half faster, but on that AstroTurf, man, he was 2.5 steps faster than everybody. He just took off, weaving back and forth for like an 84-yard touchdown or something like that. And from then on, you just knew, like, if we're going to get anywhere as a program, it's going to be because of this young man. And even after he left, man, I think we can all attest, he's the best ambassador we've ever had for this.
Yeah.
Not just the football team, this university.
And Clemson hadn't seen someone like that in years.
Oh, no.
I mean, we've had the quarterbacks, Charlie Whitehurst, you know, Willie Corn. Charlie Whitehurst was good, of course. Willie Corn was okay, but you know, such a dynamic running back was something that was new to us.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen it in a long time, so it was definitely a refreshing.
For sure.
You touched on him earlier. I have Brian Dawkins, number 2. Speaking of ambassador, just someone that represented everything that Clemson needed him to be. All-time player. He earned All-American honors. Especially why I had him up here was kind of like I said earlier with Perry, the NFL success he had. He went to 9 different Pro Bowls. Just had an outstanding career, and also has been given back lately to Clemson. We saw him this year come back from one of those games and I think donate some amount of money. I don't know what it was, but yeah, he's just had a lasting impact on the Clemson football team, and I think it's a pretty easy choice, number 2 for me.
Yeah. Moving on, number 1 for me, I had William the Fridge Perry, and let me just go through and list off some different stats. So obviously, he was the defensive tackle for Clemson between '81 and '84. He was a consensus All-American his junior year in '83, and he was nicknamed the Fridge after an incident involving an elevator. So let me give you a little bit of background info on this. So he earned the nickname when a fellow player could barely squeeze into the elevator with him when they were going downstairs to do their laundry. And the player, Ray Brown, said to him, "Man, you're about as big as a refrigerator." And teammates have been calling him the Fridge ever since. They also called him, once he got to the NFL, because he was drafted by the Chicago Bears in the first round when Mike Ditka was there. And his teammates called him Biscuit, meaning, he's one biscuit under 350 pounds. Yeah. So the guy was a monster. He ended up winning Super Bowl 20, I think it was, with the Bears. And what was actually funny, I saw this, was his Super Bowl ring is the largest in history. It's a size 25, and the average size that they make is between 10 and 12.
Oh,
the guy
like
is
Shaq's
twice.
Yeah,
it is.
seriously.
I mean, he's just like not even human. I mean, everybody knows who the Fridge is. If you're a Clemson fan,
Yeah.
you don't even have to be from that era. You've seen pictures of this, huge bear running
Right.
across the football field in an orange jersey, and it'll put the fear of God in you.
For sure. Well, my number 1 is Deshaun, and I'm sure most Clemson fans have him as their number 1 player of all time. Definitely the best player I've seen in my lifetime, probably. Just, since his freshman year when we played Georgia, and he went in on his first collegiate drive, an away game, hostile environment, and threw that pass to Sharon Peak for the touchdown. Just dropped it right over the defensive back's shoulder. It was just a perfect pass,
Oh, it's
and
pretty.
I knew. I was like, this kid is going to do something here that no one's done ever. And year after year, of course, he got hurt, but came back and came up short sophomore year. Should have won it. And of course, came up short on the Heisman. But the type of player that he is, the type of person he is, he's poised. He's a winner. And that's the kind of guy that I want leading my team. Someone who knows how to win.
Yeah, touching on that, I mean, talk about poise and lead. You hear him in post-game interviews and how well spoken he is and how articulate. It really is impressive. Because a lot of guys, I don't want to, bash anybody, but like Lamar when he received the Heisman,
Right.
his speed. I know that not everybody, but it was honestly hard to listen to. And
Or
when
even Jameis.
Yeah, and Jameis would be another good. There's tons of guys. It's not just one particular team or school. But when you hear someone like Deshaun get up and he's able to articulate and speak, and just the way that he represents the school, I definitely think in terms of like being an ambassador. I know somebody mentioned C.J. Spiller, but I think Deshaun is arguably up there as number one on that.
Yeah,
It's a habitat for humanity.
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
His story is incredible, and I think early on this season, kind of the hype from last season got to him and the other players, and I kind of told myself he's human. He's my age. We can't expect this guy to do everything when he does. So
just trying to be an average college kid.
Right, he's just a college kid and he's living life, but he got over it and he climbed the mountain and won the national championship. So.
Not only did he climb the mountain, he did it with all of us on his back.
Yeah,
that's right.
He carried everybody.
Waiting
for sure.
patiently. He's my number one as well.
Yeah.
I talk to my dad about it frequently, just in awe every time we're on the phone. Like, you can say what you want about his stats, his arm, his legs, whatever, but what he's got between his ears, you can't match that. We might never see that again.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something to marvel at, and just the way that he responded, like you said, to all that pressure, man. It was almost refreshing to see that he's human.
Right. Yeah.
Because he would have dealt with the expectations the rest of his life. They're completely unmeetable. But man, you said it all. There's not much left to say about him.
He's just a gem.
Amazing.
You probably won't see a player like him for
and
another.
just to be here as students during that time,
right.
I mean,
It's special.
It's a pleasure.
It's obviously amazing as fans and like parents or alumni, but to be here as students during arguably the greatest period of Clemson football history is definitely special. I mean, we've made it to championship games. We're sophomores, so I don't know what year y'all are, but just to have the success that we've had these 2 years has been amazing.
My dad always used to say the golden years, and now we're in those golden years. So it's real special
for sure
to be here.
Again, I also had Deshaun. Mel Kiper and Todd McShay can critique him all they want for the NFL, but
they're gonna nitpick.
There's not much else to say about the impact he's had on Clemson. Just the improvement from year to year, the impact he's had. I really have nothing else to add. He's just been a fantastic player for this university.
What I think is interesting, though, is on everybody's list, I think everybody had at least one defensive player. And that's something that you don't always see, because a lot of people consider the greatest players to be the ones with the most touchdowns, the most receiving yards, and the most rushing yards, offensive stats, right? Like, if you're thinking for the Heisman. But, I think everybody had at least one defensive guy, whether it was a linebacker, a defensive tackle. So, definitely speaks to the fact that, like you said, defense wins championships. You got to have a strong defensive core if you want to contend.
Right.
Because I think that was part of our problem when Boyd was here and Hopkins and Watkins. We had a lot of flashy lights on offense, but we really didn't have the defense to back up our, you know what I'm saying? We couldn't just outscore everyone all the time. And now that we have a better defense, much more solid defense, I think that's why we've had so much more success.
You look at the Big 12, no defense anywhere across the conference. And they steady put teams at the top for short periods of time. You can get to the top with a flashy offense.
It's just not
put up a ton
sustainable.
of points, but to stay there, you've got to have something you can
Oregon
hammer home.
under Chip Kelly.
That's a perfect example.
They made the championship, but that was mainly just because they had Mariota. You've seen how they've dropped off.
And a fun team to watch.
Right.
I love watching Oregon when they were in their prime. It was unbelievable. But you're right, unsustainable over a long period of time.
Not sure if I like seeing Baylor beat teams 66-0. Those cupcake squads. But.
And I think we saw the emergence of that defense the year we beat LSU in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. That game especially was kind of the statement that said, okay, Clemson's a force to be reckoned with, and we're here, and we're not going to leave anytime soon. Because I know, and even Zach Mettenberger wasn't that great of a quarterback, but they were always talking. They were talking about how LSU's defense was going to stop us, and they did for a while, and then of course the 4th and 16.
Well, I think, again, you touched on defense, but we also ran, I'm pretty sure, 100 offensive plays that game, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a combination. But you're right. They did make, I remember the announcers making comments throughout the game, wow, Clemson's defense is really stepping up.
They made stops.
And made plays.
They made big plays when it counted, And so that's where I remember watching that game, and I was like, okay, Clemson's coming to play. So gave me a lot of hope, looking up to the next couple of years.
It was even this year. We had Deshaun, but it was the defense that really had to step up when we needed it.
Bailed us out.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, multiple times.
Last year too. Same story last year.
Sure. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for tonight's show. It's been pretty quick. We just went over the top 5 players in our minds in Clemson football history. So for player, David, Bradley, and me, I'm Jay Smith, and this has been After Further Review.
Thanks for watching.